Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation of the realistic challenges of delivering digital twins. We are here to present this challenge from the perspective of a general contractor and a construction services company. So I would like to, first of all, thank you for joining us and introducing ourselves. So I'm Daniel Meissner. I'm currently the director of digital asset delivery team at EllisDon, and I will dive a little bit deeper into what digital asset delivery is during today's presentation. My background is in consulting, engineering design, and BIM management. My previous roles have involved being a design manager for a consulting firm based in Bogota, Colombia, and a BIM manager tasked with the BIM implementation for both local and Latin American offices. I joined EllisDon in January 2020, and I started out as director for our VDC operations in the GTA and London area. And I've kind of transitioned into leading a team of specialists and subject matter experts dedicated to creating a virtual representation of the physical reality. So now I wanted to hand it over to Diane Lee to give us a little introduction as well.
Thanks, Daniel. Good afternoon, everyone. Diane Lee here, Director of Technical Services and Building Performance for EllisDon Facility Services. Prior to joining the team about a year ago, I was working for our design build and building services group out in Vancouver. Since joining EDFS, I've kind of taken on a wider, vast range of responsibility across Canada, supporting all of our EDFS projects and sites and pursuits, pretty much from east to west coast. And then through that, in the last year, we've gone down this exploration of working with Daniel's team and a wider range of the asset delivery team as well in developing many initiatives and scopes of work that we have underway. So today we would definitely like to share a little bit about our experience around how that is going. We don't profess to know everything, but it's part of knowledge sharing, and I think it's important to engage as many people as we go through this experience in going through deploying a digital twin. So it's a very unique experience for us. We're as part of EDFS, we are undergoing deploying a digital twin as the client, but we are also working on projects with external clients as well. So it's a bit of a twofold knowledge sharing and experience and information gathering as we embark on the experience ourselves for our own properties and sites, but also delivering services to potential and existing clients.
Okay, so where do we start? So as the day has progressed, we've gotten great insights about the future and the finance of digital twins. And I want to take a little bit of something that Alexandra mentioned, how important our decisions and our bases are, right? I've definitely learned, and I had a number in my head, which was $111 billion of market share by 2035. I've recently updated that to 135, so thanks for that. And we all know that we really want to have a part of that, a little bit of money. But there's also a big part, which is what issues can we solve? How can we be better? We also then transitioned to Igor showing us some interesting examples of how, facility owners are leveraging common data environments and how they are presenting their solution of a digital twin. So we kind of wanted to approach it a little bit differently. And as Diane mentioned, we've been collaborating a lot across the past months because we see this as a business opportunity, but also a place where we can actually just do better at what we do, right? So we want to bring a lot of knowledge sharing. We want to tell you what we've encountered, the issues we've had, and hopefully a little bit of this allows you to not face those challenges, or at least be prepared to them when you start to embark on the journey of a digital twin. So, of course, we did start today by defining a digital twin, right? And I am not here to tell you what it is. I'm not here to try and take that away and define it, because it is something that we as an industry need to agree on, right? We also want to make sure we don't overuse the buzzword and destroy potential relationships, right? We don't have people selling digital twins and then clients being kind of on the receiving end of something that isn't really what they expected. And, I kind of trace this back to when BIM had this big boom, right? And everyone was doing BIM. And then you would approach a client and say, hey, I've got this new kind of process. It's called BIM. It's awesome. It's going to give you savings. And they'll say, oh, you know what? I got someone who brought BIM services to my project. We actually lost a lot of money. And all they got was just, I don't know, a bland 3D model that they weren't really able to leverage throughout construction, right? So just to bring a little bit of conversation to the table, I kind of cherry picked two definitions, and I'm going to read them with you, which is the first definition we brought is to the left, IBM. So a digital twin is a virtual representation of an object or a system that spans its life cycle, is updated from real-time data, and uses simulation, machine learning, and reasoning to help decision making. Now, on the right side, I brought the definition by Matterport. So a digital twin is a digital copy of a real-world place or object. Artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies enable the creation of digital twins, which are dimensionally accurate 3D digital models that can be updated quickly to reflect changes with its physical counterpart. And I just, for discussion purposes, want to compare a little bit of a couple small things. On one end, we're talking systems, but on the other end, we already are giving these systems a name. We're talking about spaces, right? And it's a little bit of the difference of how one would approach the definition of a digital twin to serve their service offering, but also, what they're looking for and how they're leveraging it and what they come to bring to the client, right? So we also have little conversations about real-time data versus, I'll use the term that is on Matterport's definition, updated quickly. And there's a difference. And when you go to the Digital Twin Consortium's definition, I believe at some point they talk about a periodic update. So, in the end, we are talking about the same things. We're just approaching them from a different side because we have different end goals. So what are we as EllisDon looking to get from this digital twin? So to start, and again, I'm not bringing this definition. This is not between quotes. This is not how we see a digital twin, but how it can help us. So we really want to make sure that we develop a digital twin across our services, right? We are a construction services company, and we're here to help our clients go from an idea to a facility, help them operate it, and eventually, if needed, decommission their handover. So we want to make sure that we construct a digital version of this physical reality. We understand where our project is at any point in time. We can also use this data to respond to any changes. And of course, we want to be able to provide real-time analytics, understand how my asset or my project is behaving, how it's going to change, and hopefully simulate potential changes and what outcome they will come with, right? Okay, so where do we start? And we're going to start by bridging the gap between construction and operations. And one of the biggest reasons why I'm sitting here with Diane, because a place to start was, how do I make sure if we're building a model, if we're creating a digital representation of a built asset, how do I make sure it's useful for, let's say, Diane, but for the facility services and for the operator, for the owner, for my end user, right? For that place that's going to be using this facility for 30 odd or more years in the future. So by now, you've probably all seen this slide or a version of it, right? We've seen the beaten down silos. We've all done that speech about how we really need to, and I'll echo Igor a little bit, find that golden thread and ensure that we do not have gaps between the handover of information that occurs between teams, right? And we're talking about this a lot, but we haven't, and although we've made incredible strides to bridge these gaps, I'm very certain to say we haven't really reached a, let's call it a collaboration nirvana, right? Or a level 3 BIM, or however you may call it. We found a lot of ways. We've digitized the industry. We as EllisDon have worked tirelessly on digital project delivery and ensuring these transfers are seamless. There's always work to do, right? There's always skill matching that is required. There's still a lot of conversations. We have to go through contracts, through expectations. But okay, where do we want to start? And we want to start by focusing on this box right here, the handover between construction and operations, and this large gap, which is actually not permitting us to leverage all of this data that we've had along the process of our project, right? We've heard the studies. We know that one of the issues that we have is we're just either accruing useless data or not accruing the data we have. So we want to focus on this gap and delivering what our end user really needs. So what was our solution? we actually created a specialized team to bridge the gap between construction and operations. So leverage on previous experience with building information models and creating working groups with our own internal teams to understand exactly what they need and create a strategy to ensure this golden thread of information not only is seamless, but actually works to their benefit, right? Now, it is needless to say, if we want to focus on this gap, we are going to have to go back and talk at every point in time of a project's life cycle. We need to be able to reach our clients when they're thinking about what they want to do with their project, if they want to future-proof it, if they want to have smart buildings. We also need to make sure we talk with our pre-construction team, our design team, the people that are kicking off the creation of this model. So I'll just give you a simple example. We had a client come in, they had this building and they had recently heard about digital twins and they said, okay, you know what? We want to start leveraging the model. We know we have a BIM model. We overheard it. We've seen it. You've presented it to us. We have a BIM model, right? And we've heard that we can save a bunch of money if we use it during operations and if we want to go towards a digital twin. So EllisDon, come here. Help me. How do I achieve this? So we sat down with them, we reviewed the information they had, and we came up with a game plan, a costing strategy, and said, okay, your model is what I sometimes call coordinated enough. It was a model used to help you build, right? But it's not ready for you to FM. There's still a little bit of a cog left to go around and make sure to start you have an as-built model. So these are the steps we want to go through with you to ensure you have a model that's ready to be leveraged for facility management, right? As soon as they saw the cost, they kind of said, oh, wait a minute, that's not in our budget. We actually just had a little bit of money left over from our budget, so we kind of thought, hey, you might as well, right? So this is an issue we all have, and particularly when we talk BIM, and I'll go cliche and talk about the McLeany curve, right? About knowing where we're heading and putting in the effort in the planning stages so that we can actually plan and move ahead in the future. So amongst the sea of challenges and tasks that we had before us in the road to implement our digital twin and to find these bases on where to build it, today we kind of wanted to bring 3 questions or 3 basic challenges that we want to answer and tell you a little bit about our experience and what we learned from them. So question number 1 will be, how are we gathering the correct data? Question number 2 will be, are we addressing our clients' needs? And question number 3, do we really have a smart building strategy? Are we asking the questions at the right time? So let's start by, how are we gathering the correct data? So we started defining a digital twin. What is the process if we rely on BIM to get a digital twin, relying on BIM as that golden thread? The first piece we're going to need is the physical asset, right? Then we need to ensure that there's a virtual representation of this asset, what we usually call an as-built model. Now, sorry, the evolution of this as-built model will be the asset information model, which is loaded with the correct information we wish to extract analytics from in our final step, the digital twin. And let's notice the word, the correct information, not just data. If we want to rely on our digital twin to make decisions for us, we really should make sure that we're feeding it the correct information if we're going to rely on it to make decisions for us. So there we go. We need to ensure that we're accruing the correct data. So we need to focus on ensuring that we are creating, as a company, either for our use or for our clients' use, a trustworthy and useful asset information model. So basically, we had our first mission. And fortunately for us, we had a first client, which is operations, represented by Diane, right? So we understand that BIM is an efficient path to the creation of an accurate value digital twin. So we really needed to revisit and revamp our asset information model standard, which is part and plays with our BIM execution plan and standards, right? We needed to make sure that we were asking the right questions, where before maybe we were focusing too much on construction, on coordination, and making sure the asset was built in a correct and efficient manner, but really thinking of this as a vessel of information, right? Our workflows We're very Revit-centric. We're really thinking about what family am I modeling? What is the level of detail we have, right? But we weren't really thinking about what information we wanted to have. We needed to agree on an asset register. We needed to make sure that we knew what is the asset data that we need to have and why and at what point in time. So that took us on a journey of re-exploring and reopening that box of the LOD matrix, which, if you're working with BIM and BDC, you've probably heard your fair share of. But demystifying a lot of those things that maybe we thought we knew in the beginning. So when I used to do these conversations about what is BIM, and you would go through explaining the level of detail and geometry, etc., I remember using a phrase, and I'll say it this way. I now apologize to everyone who I told this in my past, that you need an LD 400 model to achieve FM, right? So we really need to demystify that and really ask ourselves, do we really need an LD 400 model? Or do we mostly need to leverage that line item that is in a, let's use the BIM foreign definition of LOD. That line item that says non-graphical information can be added to the asset, right? Let's really understand what that means. And let's ask the question of what is the data I need? When do I need it to come in? And who's providing it, right? And remove that idea that I just need a 400 model. We've had clients come in and say, okay, I want to leverage this model for FM. I want to be future ready, future proof, ready for a digital twin. This is my BIM standard, right? And requesting LOD 400 for every single element. Now, I'm not kidding you. We were asking for caulking, flashing, waterproofing, and we were 5 minutes deep into a conversation of asking our client, why do you need this? And it was immediately removed from the standard, right? We really don't know. We just thought we need everything if we want to do everything with it, right? And last but not least, we needed to make sure we created processes to ensure that this data was accrued in a correct manner. And we were tracking it on time. And we were not running around trying to get all the data right before handover, which tends to happen a lot, right? We just want to make sure that we accrue data as the progress progresses, right? So in a sense, we were able to create our own standard and revamp it with the goal of having models that we want to leverage, and we want them to serve as a base for our digital twin. If I wanted to leverage Igor's previous presentation, if I were to engage Ecodamus, we would have a very easy kickoff meeting because I know exactly what I need to show on his software. I know what asset registry I need to populate. I know exactly what types of models are going to come in. And I also know what value is coming out, right? So I can really leverage the person who's there with the software and who wants to help me use that data and accrue it, right? So, it'd be a very easy way to converse. So the first challenge we had to overcome was just ensuring getting this data, getting this information at the correct time. Now, on the plus side, not only were we able to understand where we wanted to go, now we have this awesome base that is going to help us when our clients come in and say, I want to have a digital twin. Okay, let's just make up a question. What's your asset register? I don't know. I'm not sure. Can you show me what do you have? What do you use? And it helps us guide the conversation and ask the correct questions to our client. Which brings me to our second question. Are we really addressing our client's need, right? So with many clients coming in and everyone trying to say we're doing digital twins and maybe a little bit of fear of missing out and kind of using the buzzword to our advantage, when they come to us with questions, are we delivering on what they really need? Or are we maybe trying to just ride the wave and say, I gave this client a digital twin so I can kind of tick that box and use it in my next marketing presentation, right? So I'll start with an example and just picture this. We have a client, he comes in, knocks on the door, and he says, I recently heard about digital twins. I want to create one for my facility. Okay, sure thing, let's talk. What do you want this digital twin to reflect or resolve? Nah, I'm not sure. You tell me. Okay, let's go back. What information do you have available? I'll send you a link to my Google Drive, and you just get this digital version of a warehouse of information, right? So these are a lot of the issues that start coming in with existing facilities. So coming back to Alexander's presentation, that's 90, I hope I don't fudge the numbers, but it's about 95 or 95% of the built environment is existing facilities, right? So they're the these are the buildings that are ready to take on this technology and that weren't thought of future-proof, where we didn't think about this before the fact. So these buildings have no legacy information, or little to none or unupdated legacy information. They usually have a low investment capacity. They're operating, they're just running their day to day, and it's not usual to just have an influx of money to try and future-proof and digitize my asset. And they also have a lot of grandfather systems. So not only would you have to create a digital twin, you're going to need to build an infrastructure. So I remember somebody asked a question at some point previously, but it starts to add into a lot of money. How much money do I need to invest to create this digital twin from my project, right? So we kind of come in and say, okay, maybe we want to start by doing some scan to BIM, right? And creating a model to represent the status where your facility is right now. Now, I can use the buzzword a little bit, and instead of calling it a as-built model, I can say, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to offer you a descriptive twin. That's a decision I have to take, right? But what is he really looking for? Understanding his facility, understanding what state it is right now, right? He also wants to digitize his whole portfolio, but there's still no budget. And we still don't know the ROI. And that's one of the biggest questions we still have when implementing new technologies. You do get asked by a question. You recently will get asked this question a lot when you offer a new service to a client. What is my return on investment? And we're still getting there, right? We have use cases, but we don't have a finite number. So maybe a phased approach is interesting. But in the end, we still don't know what we want to achieve, right? So we kind of found an opportunity with this client to find ourselves in a happy medium, right? And the happy medium is creating a proof of concept and really sitting down with them and understanding what do they want to get, but also what are they missing to be able to digitize their projects and move forward with, these smart buildings, these live assets. So we started to work with them. And at the end of the process, a client that had come to ask us for a digital twin actually received a bunch of different services that their facility had that will make it ready for a potential digital twin, right? We were able to create processes to ensure that the as-built information was updated appropriately. We were able to help them complete their asset registry and connect it to their building systems, be it a CMMS, be it a space management system. We were able to devise a strategy to create an as-built model in a phased fashion and in a meaningful fashion. I remember talking to a facility manager and talking about modeling their building. And we were just going around examples, understanding their facility. And he immediately said, you know what? To exemplify the issues I'm having, I'm going to show you this room. And he knew exactly what room always had the issues, where the information was missing. And it's a good place to start. You don't need to do a full digital twin of a building. You can start with a place that is your problem child, understand what you need, and grow from there, right? And we were able to create a first use case. And this is what we need. And we need to have these use cases to understand how these tools are helping us. And eventually, we're also fortunate enough to be exploring, as their partner, the software opportunities. So do we want to build something with them? Do we want to give them our version of a digital twin? Or do they have a system that is going to be built on top, where we want to build this digital twin on top of? And also help them navigate a little bit of the software kind of jungle that's out there, right? Because you will hear a lot of vendors coming in and saying, this is your digital twin. And I mean, maybe it's needless to say, but I'll go around and say it. Having a CMMS with a Forge viewer where you can just kind of see a pretty picture and move around the model is far from being a digital twin. It is an integration of an as-built model and the CMMS. So I've spoken a little bit about how the team, with the help of our own EDFS team, was able to create a strategy to collect data. I've also spoken about how sometimes the apparent need for a digital twin actually opens up opportunities for collaboration to our clients and solve foundational issues. So now I want to hand it over to Diane Lee, and as a user, she will address a little bit of the final challenges of the day from her eyes.
Starting off with asking the question if we have a smart building strategy, going through something that is pretty typical in the industry, such as an owner's project requirements or technical formal requirements. Why it's important to start off with that, I'm not going to go into the greater detail as to what an OPR is, because I would like to think that a lot of people on this call would know what that is. So I would like to kind of shed some light on, making sure that your OPR and technical requirements are comprehensive, specific around equipment integration, asset and building integration platform requirements, identifying minimum data points, and collection and reporting requirements. From there, the development of smart building strategy, that would turn into a bit of a formal roadmap and scope delineation of the project team, which is very important, and integration matrix of all building components, and third-party data. It's just as equally important to define, setting up user group meetings early on, establishing an approval process, and then also determining, what real-time data extraction looks like and for what purpose. One thing that does not get mentioned too often is establishing a bit of a stabilization period post-implementation. So I think it's very key that when we're talking about developing a smart building strategy, that these key considerations are spoken or reviewed as early and determined as early as possible. And then upon completion of the development of the OPR and the smart building strategy, it definitely will contribute in driving a clear and concise set of requirements within the BIM execution plan, and around the scopes of work. So emphasis I want to highlight is emphasis on scope of work applies to both, not just the contractor, the design team, but also the MSI and the MTI. Having been on the client side, reviewing it with many multiple vendors or prospective providers, based on our point of view, this is not heavily covered or rarely covered. And it's really important that the integration of the team and the role of the MSI and MTI are heavily considered when we're talking about the overall smart building strategy, as well as the digital twin, and what is it going to be used for and how we're going to get there. If we move to the next slide. Diving into a little bit more around owner and end user key considerations. So I have a few points here that I have pulled up, but I'll kind of go into detail. So BIM drivers and integration requirements. As Daniel mentioned, the LOD and the LOI matrix is very key in early development and in defining key indicators and the level of information and detail within the matrix for coordination. And then as well as covering the coordination model requirements early on. And then also taking into consideration what we call a BIP spec or a building integration platform spec. If you don't have one of those, that's really important in making sure that you're engaging your design team to have a very comprehensive one. We've recently worked on a few projects that have a BIP spec, and it's slowly but surely evolving, and the requirements are becoming more and more rigorous, which is great to see. But there's certainly a lot of room of opportunity to expand on meeting the requirements of that smart building strategy. Data collection analysis, why it's important, why do we need this? It's good to establish and answer these questions at the beginning. It's certainly not ideal if you have a provider knocking on your door and saying, we want to sell you a digital twin, and the client kind of just allows that provider to take the lead. It's really important to define what you want and what you want to do with it and for what purpose. And then how will this information be utilized? So a few examples that come to mind specifically from an EDFS standpoint would be comparable analysis of our 20 to 30 year life cycle model, especially with our P3D BFM projects. Completing financial analysis when reviewing annual CapEx and operation plans. So part of what we do is, from each of our sites, we do review and approve them on an annual basis, but to be able to extrapolate data from a digital twin and the analysis and the real-time reporting, it would allow us to align whether if that's on track, or it also supplements the budget review and approval process for us. Lastly, the related data collection analysis. So investment and divestment purposes of portfolio and maintainable assets, that's more related to, prospective clients, not so much for EDFS, but it's certainly something that is considered a driver as to why you would want to invest in a digital twin, and the data that it produces for you. Future proofing and standardization, opportunities to reassess future plans, as well as your corporate strategy and optimization of campus-wide management of building and assets. That's something that is a good time early on when you're developing your smart building strategy to see what else can we work on, what are the other opportunities, what else, for future planning and future proofing do we need to take into consideration when developing the strategy and the plan and developing the various contract documents for integration. And then from there, change management protocol and coordination model. Coordination model leading up to the as-built model. So what is the workflow and what is the process between, especially, the entire project phase of design to post construction and implementation. It's really important to identify a well-rounded, robust change management protocol, as most of you would know that, through the period of the construction process, there are a lot of changes, last minute revisions, through just the BIM execution coordination side of things. They're, just from an interference standpoint, infrastructure or equipment may be relocated or sizing may change. So it's really key to transfer that information back to the coordination model in a timely manner, so that when we are ready to say that we have reached to a point of an as-built model, that it truly is, in the most accurate state as possible. And then lastly, here shown as the as-built model maintenance, emphasis around what we like to highlight is, this isn't really discussed either amongst the industry, is consideration of ongoing requirements post-implementation and for future renovation. Emphasis around decommissioning of assets is also important as it relates to not just the model, but also to CMMS requirements. Going into the next slide, I've highlighted a few of additional key considerations to supplement what I just covered. So development of the asset management and delivery protocol, which is what Daniel covered earlier. So what we want to make sure is that is, as mentioned earlier, is the asset register established? Is the LOD LOI matrix aligned with the scopes of work to manage any potential scope creeps, as well as QA QC requirements? So not just do we want to make sure that it meets the intent, but how do we actually get there? So there has to be an element of testing and commissioning of assets as equipment come on board, on live, and become operational. Incorporation of lifecycle model and asset management requirements. So establishing key KPIs and FDD custom rules. This is something that we have become more and more heavily involved with in developing custom FDD rules, just because a lot of the providers out there say that they can provide custom FDD rules, but generally they draw upon a standard library of preset rules. And that may work for a non-complex, commercial type building. But when you're working with a healthcare facility, which makes up a majority of our portfolio, it's not ideal. We definitely need to get involved with, one, making sure that the digital twin is capable of custom FDD rules, and what that process is if someone like ourselves as the owner want to have a major part in developing the custom FDD rules. And that dives into the next side of comprehensive FDD requirements. So emphasis, as we go through this experience in not just internally, but externally when we were working with clients, determining project and system specific requirements early and upfront is key. All modes of operations should be considered, especially in a healthcare facility. Again, drawing upon a library of FDD rules is not ideal, especially when we're talking about effective management of priority sequencing, to also encompass energy performance, things like life cycle costs, utilities data, real-time data reporting, and effective measurement tools for building optimization efforts, post-implementation, and for ongoing commissioning. A lot of buildings these days do incorporate ongoing commissioning requirements, so it's important to make sure that the investment that we as owners are going to put into something like a digital twin, that there is that ongoing element or component with what can this do and how do we continue to utilize it as best as we can with the data that's supposed to support in many efforts such as ongoing commissioning. And then establishing a skilled team, designated subject matter experts and VDC teams who are knowledgeable with FMO requirements and end user experience. That's going through this journey or this experience with our asset delivery team, and even working with our construction team. It's really, really crucial that whoever are the designated leads truly understand and are knowledgeable with FMO requirements, because it's a very holistic view, and I don't want to say it's wearing the construction goggles, but sometimes if you're not thinking about the end user and it's just about the BIM model, then the effort is somewhat a bit lost. And going into the last slide here from my side, so what's next? To kind of summarize, the various key considerations and requirements that I just provided. I'd like to kind of leave off by saying, some things to consider once we do implement a digital twin is, what happens post-implementation, post-construction. Construction phase commissioning, when it's complete, what's next? Do we define and establish a hard stop to say, okay, just because construction phase commissioning is complete, that the data that I'm going to, extrapolate from the digital twin is 100% accurate? No, I can tell you that 100% because seasonal and deferred commissioning is not done. So there's a warranty period. So what happens during the management of those remaining activities, and how does that relate back to the digital twin? And then establishing a formal validation process, which would encompass a stabilization period as well as an energy reporting period. Especially with our DBFM projects on the P3 sides, there are contractual requirements around energy reporting, and there is a stabilization period. So to manage expectations when we deploy something like a digital twin, it's important to take these key considerations as well, so that as data comes in for the first couple of months, as the project is handed over, it would not be reflective of a normal operating period, a year from now, once the building has gone through two operating seasons. And that's pretty much it for what's next. I'll hand that back to Daniel. Thank you.
So this process has actually allowed us to build a strong foundation on top of which to deliver a digital twin. So we brought you challenges, right? We need communication, we need to get the correct data. But actually going through these challenges has made us, in every step of the process towards getting ready for a digital twin, we've been able to ask ourselves the correct questions, know what questions to ask from our clients who are coming to us with digital twin needs, and build a strong foundation. Because tying it back to the beginning, if we want these twins to make decisions for us, we need to make sure we have a steady place to stand on. And the information and data we're leveraging to make these decisions is sound and is correct and is accurate. So 2:55 on the dot. Thank you so much. And that was our presentation.